Hey, Alchin here. A little different from my usual YouTube content. Instead of a live stream for a game, today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a tier list for the game Moonstone Island, a creature collector card game that I'm quite fond of. See a lot of people in the Discord talking about theory crafting, what spirits are the best, and I thought I'd make a little video just to share my thoughts on what's powerful and what isn't. There are two different classes of spirits in the game. There are spirits that are good for combat, and spirits that have out-of-combat passives. And we're going to be ranking them pretty much based entirely on these passives. If we were to do the combat based on like card quality and deck quality and like overall power, these psychic and dark spirits would all end up on the top of the list, and then like the water and the fire spirits would all end up in the bottom here, and that's just not particularly interesting. So I thought instead it would be best just to do it entirely based on the quality of their passive ability, and we get some more interesting results out of that. Combat abilities are going to be ranked based on how good they are in combat. Do they clear enemies? Do they give you a more powerful engine to progress your game plan? Whereas out-of-combat abilities are going to be based more on about like how much time they save and how much they open up the rest of the game. There are going to be some minor spoilers in the game in discussing some things. When I get to Womr here, for example, I'm going to have to talk a little bit about the reward for the Fall Temple. And there might be some other things like that throughout this list. So I'll try and give warnings as I get to them. If you don't want to know those things, that you can just skip ahead a little bit past that spirit and just kind of look at their place on the list instead of going through my discussion with them. So without further ado, let's get started with Ankylo. Ankylo's passive ability is Bad Temper. Every 3 turns, he gains 1 rage. This is good. I don't love that it's uncontrollable, right? Every 3 turns, there are some fights in the game that have unpredictable damage spikes, and the rage every 3 turns, while powerful, can be just a little bit of an unnecessary risk, right? But it is very powerful, and you can plan your bashes and armor breaks around it. So I'm going to put him, he's going to be like the tone setter for us. He's going to be the definition of a B tier ability. It's an ability that has its utilities in battle, but also has very clear, easy to understand drawbacks. Next, Brickhouse has the Madhouse passive ability. If a tackle card is available, draw it from your draw pile at the beginning of each turn. Now, Brickhouse is probably the best spirit for the Focus Tackle deck playstyle. Focus is a card that makes all the tackle cards in your deck cost 0 energy. And by using Brickhouse with that Focus card, you're guaranteed to gain that resource every single turn. Now, is this a good game plan, is the question. And I think in the early game it's perfectly average when you don't have any particularly good cards, but it pretty distinctly falls off in the late game. So I think that, I don't know. I'm already frozen here. I'm gonna put him in C tier for now, and he might get graduated to B tier later in the video as we kind of look at other things in the list. Because again, it does enable a new playstyle that other creatures can't quite do. It's just like, is that playstyle any good? Coolslime! Free food. Once tamed, feeding this spirit in battle costs 0 energy. This is another ability that's pretty powerful in the early game. I would say, unlike Brickhouse, though, it maintains its quality into the mid and late game, just because you're always getting scaling more and more powerful foods, and healing's always at a premium. So the ability for free to heal your own guy is pretty powerful. Is it A tier powerful, or is it B tier powerful, though? I'm going to put him in the B tier for now. He doesn't really make the fights faster. He's just like a pretty sturdy, reliable guy if you're doing an Earth card game plan. He's just neutral. He's just okay. He's just decent at doing what he's got to do. Dusty. When I saw this little guy's passive, I was excited as hell. Little guy energy reads, whenever one of your attacks is completely blocked, you gain 1 energy. This is probably the first energy manipulation ability that you're going to come across in the course of the game. And unfortunately, it's not a very good one. When it says one of your attacks, it means one of your cards. It does not mean one of your hits. When I saw this, I was like, oh, big brain. I'm going to play a bite deck, guys. He's going to bite someone, and all 4 hits are going to get blocked, and he's going to gain 4 energy and go crazy energy pop. No, that's not how this works. So the only way to go energy positive on this is to be playing a tackle deck, a focused tackle deck, where you smash the enemy with 0 damage tackles to gain energy. Is that any good? Not really, no. In the early game, I guess it could be a way to cheat energy, but we're going to see way better ways in the list. If he was the only energy cheat, I might bump him up to C, but when we get to the psychic and other spirits, then yeah, we're just going to see options that dwarf our little guy so hard that there's just not really any point in committing to the bit. Which is unfortunate, because, I mean, look at him. Look at him! What a perfect little guy. You want to run this guy, right? Fluffox is our first example of an out-of-combat ability in this list. Friendly fluff increases the chance of successfully chatting, flirting, or joking by 5%. This doesn't save you a lot of time in the context of any particular day, but in the run of a playthrough, especially in the early game, he can save you a lot of mess-ups in conversation. You know, there's a lot of time where you're going to your girl Farah, and you just want to get a little cheeky flirt in, but there's only the 10% chance of success. Well, that's a 50% increase in your chance of success with Fluffox. You're probably better off, you know, hitting the 70 to 75 talk chance. But we got a gambler spirit in here, you know? And Fluffox just pushes those odds a little bit in your favor. While he does fall off pretty hard in the late game, just because of how valuable he is in the early game for getting you over the hump, I really can't put him in A tier. You're probably only going to use him for the first season or 2, and then all your friends will like you enough that the bonus is negligible. We're going to put him in B tier. He's like a pretty firm, pretty quality, generic little guy. Now Gemlin. Gemlin's ability, Reliable Talent, reads, at the start of each turn, draw in additional attack card. I don't know how much experience you guys have in card games, but this enables a lot of interesting stuff. This is what's referred to in the people in the know as a tutor ability. Tutoring means it goes into your deck and draws a card of a specific type, or if you build your deck around it, it can draw a specific card. Moonstone Island has minimum deck sizes for each spirit of 8 cards. So if you're running a full team of 3 spirits, that's 24 cards. If you're running only 1 spirit, that could be 8 cards. The ability to target a specific card in your deck can be incredibly powerful for a variety of game plans. In this game, you probably don't want to build decks with only 1 or 2 attack cards, but even if you don't, it's still reliable to get more options every fight. I'm going to go ahead and toss him for now in the A tier. Once we're a little further in this list, he might actually get upgraded to S. Actually, let's put him in the S. I'm thinking about the creatures that I am going to put in S later. of which there are a couple, but there's one in particular that's probably going to get a tier of his own above S later. And I think that with all the other creatures in that option, Gemlin is, pretty flush with the rest of them. Hopstraw. Scary Straw. Increases chances of successfully fleeing from battle by 10%. This is pretty decent in the early game. Later on, there's an ability you can get in the talent tree that just puts your flee chance to 100%. But you're probably going to get that pretty late in the game. And fleeing is very, very good for a few certain things. For farming specific spirits, for farming hollows, you want your flee chance to be pretty high. Now, while you use this ability in battle, I actually consider it a time-saving, quote-unquote, out-of-combat ability. And because of just how much utility he has for targeting certain spirits in the early game, I'm going to put him firmly in the B tier. Again, later in the game, he's going to fall off. Once you get that passive ability that makes you flee to 100%, he's going to be an F tier option. So let's split the difference actually and put him in C. Because in the early game, he's a solid B tier option. And then at a certain point in the game, he's just gonna get knocked down to the F. Longlog. Stamina reduced 10% slower. I think they could have made this way better. This could have been 50% and it wouldn't have been a problem. Stamina in this game is really easy to manage. Even in the early game, you can just kind of run around the islands, pick a lot of stone fruit, and never really have to think about your stamina. It is not even remotely worth running a stamina reduction ability. Which is a shame. Longlog's a silly little guy. I love his little animation when he's following you. He was on my team for a little while, but at the end of the day, you don't notice his passive at all, which means it's the definition of an F tier ability. Mumbleweed. Mumble Tumble reads, whenever Mumbleweed reduces an enemy to 0 armor, draw a card. This is pretty damn good. I'm just going to pop this guy in the A tier. If you build Mumbleweed as a speed bash user, and you get him scaled to the point where he can, stagger people 2, 3 at a time, this can be a pretty powerful card draw engine, and he can take you pretty far. You know what? Considering who I'm going to put in the A tier, I'm actually going to pump him up to the S. The ability to draw up to 3 cards around in a large fight is pretty powerful. Cycle in a deck of 24 cards, 3 cards means that you can get an eighth of the way through your deck in 1 turn. Even more if you run a lot of exhaust. And he can just get you to your outs and your options pretty easily and carry you through a fight. And the reason I upgraded him from A to S is this guy right here. Oaken is in A tier spirit through and through. Probably the baseline of what we're gonna Bark Bash reads, when Oaken makes an enemy dizzy, its power raises by 1 for the rest of combat. This is just scaling. This is just fine scaling. Oaken hits an enemy, makes him dizzy, gets a power, it doesn't go away, he just does a little bit more damage. And in the early game, that's a pretty significant increase of damage. When your pool of power is like in the 5 to 10 range, this is like a 20 to 10% buff every time you make someone dizzy, and you can keep doing it over and over in the fight. In long fights, you could be gaining, I don't know, 3, 5, 10 power. He's just a pretty solid little option for getting through some of the early game dungeons, and you're not going to go wrong running him as your Earth Spirit in the team. Pappus. Breeze Bender reduces wind resistance while flying. I actually think this only applies to the balloon. I tried testing it with the glider and the broom, and I couldn't tell a difference. But in the early game, when you're flying from island to island in the balloon and struggling really hard, I guess he could be kind of clutch. We'll put him in C tier because he has a place and he has a purpose. But you're probably not going to be running him for very long. The broom's going to be one of the first things you want to craft in the game tool-wise, so he's going to be made obsolete incredibly quick. Punchypot is a neat little guy. He has plentiful punches, spawns an uppercut in your hand at the start of each turn. Now, the problem, uppercut's a decent card. It's 1 mana, deal 3 damage, draw a card. So it doesn't hurt, but it's not great, right? An uppercut plus draws 2 cards and makes you card positive. But the problem with uppercut unupgraded, which is all you'll get from Punchypot, is that it just draws you the card that you would have got anyway if it wasn't in the deck. And since it happens at the start of your turn, it pollutes your deck and dilutes your deck something fierce. When I started this video, I thought I was going to put him in the B tier. But thinking about what he does to your deck, I actually think this is a detriment. I think it actually makes your plan worse. Because all you're doing is getting these little uppercuts instead of the cards that you actually want to draw. If we had more energy, Cycle would be fine. But since by default you only have 3 energy a turn, you have to really commit to a high energy game plan to make Punchypot any good. And if you don't commit to that plan, then he's just an active weight, drawing your average card quality down. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to put him in the F tier. In the proper deck, I think he could be C or even B tier. But for the average player running the average game plan, he's just too much of a dead weight. Womr. Either B or A tier. Womr's really good in the first 2 seasons, right? When you're running around trying to feed your spirits, scything up grass eats a lot of your time. But Womr's ability, Lawnmower, just says walking through grass cuts it down. I think he's better than Fluffox, so I have to put him in the A tier, definitionally. You walk through the grass, you chop it up, you can feed your spirits, life is good. We like that. The only problem with Womr is that once you get to, and spoilers, jump to wherever I'm waving Chiminea around on the preview. Maybe I'll put timestamps in, check to see if I did. Once you get to the Fall Temple and you get the boomerang, and you can just whip the boomerang and cut all the grass in a line, Womr falls way the fuck off. But that's Fall. And that's so far in the game, like halfway through a generic playthrough, that he stays good enough for half the game. He helps you out in feeding your barn crops. He's an A tier. He saves you tons of time. Speaking of people who saves you tons of time, Chiminea, get rocked. 30% chance to break rocks in 1 hit. Most rocks, depending on your hammer, take 3 to 5 hits, I think. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while, and I progressed through the game a while ago. But either way, this can save you an absolute ton of time going through mines, exploring, and looking for stuff. And there isn't really a replacement for it at any point in the game. So we're going to put him up in the A tier. I've done a little bit of testing, and most passive abilities I have confirmed do stack. If you have 2 Longlogs in the team, your stamina goes down 20% slower. Fluffox, if you have 3 of them in the team, you get plus 15% buff. But I actually haven't tested to see if Chiminea stacks. And if Chiminea stacks, how does he stack? Because he's a 30% chance to break rocks in one hit. So if you have two of them, does that mean you have a 60% chance? Or two 30% chances? That's very different. Two 1 and 3s are not the same as a 2 and 3. So that's something interesting that could use some testing. Either way, Chiminea is very good, saves you a lot of time. Whether it stacks or not, I think he's going to stay exactly where he is in the A tier. But if it stacks and you could have 3 of him, I could hear the argument that he gets bumped up to S. But that's the last of our Earth Spirits. So let's pop into Water Spirits. As a class, Water Spirits aren't great. I would argue that they have some of the worst cards in the game. A lot of their cards are a healing game plan, and you're just better off using food for that most of the time. It's usually way more energy efficient to use your strongest seasonal crops. So I haven't really spent a lot of time with most of these guys. So take these opinions with a little grain of salt, aside from a few of the later boys who we'll get into. That said, this list is based entirely off of their passive abilities. So let's get on with it. Beabeau, Biabeau, I don't know how to pronounce this name. It looks French as hell. He's a beach ball, and his ability reads Cool Shades. He earns 10% more XP on sunny days. That does something, I guess. But it doesn't really save you that much time. The best way to gain experience in this game is not through combat, is not through dungeons, it's through EXP crops. And, well, this saves you, I guess, 1 in every 10 crops, but it doesn't save you that much time, right? Because it doesn't take that much time out of your day to feed your guys. At the end of the day, this is one of the 3 spirits in your team, so you're really only saving like 3.3% time and resources on this. Who cares? Who cares? Not worth the ability, in my opinion. Claudio, Rain Run. When following you, increases your movement speed by 20% on rainy and snowy days. 20% move speed is pretty significant. It gets a lot more done in your day. The only problem is, how often does it rain or snow? Like, 5 days a month? I guess it depends on your RNG. This is fine. We'll put him in the B tier. Like, if it was all the time, he'd be like A or maybe even S. But the fact that he's limited to rainy days, and you gotta like go and juggle him in and out of your team, and you gotta have him like leveled up and ready to go, it's just whatever. When you're running around doing stuff like collecting stone fruits and stuff, yeah, you know what? Let's put him in B tier. Now, I guess the optimal use case for Claudio is you notice that it's raining. You don't have to water your crops. I mean, you should have sprinklers anyway, but early game. And you go, okay, I guess I can spend the morning running around picking a bunch of stone fruit, stacking up my energy, and we're gonna be good to go. Dropple. Reduce an enemy's armor by 1 each round. Hold on, let me scroll down real quick here. I think there's another one spirit later on who just does this better. Yeah. There is. Salt versus steel, reduce one enemy's armor. Not all the enemies. Just one enemy's armor, reduced by 1 each round. It's not nothing, but it might as well be. Like, it could be the difference between dizzying someone and not. But the odds are really, really low that it actually amounts to anything. And that makes a C tier option. I'm starting to notice a trend with the temple exclusive spirits not being great. I think that'd really make them more valuable, considering that they're going to be Like the second hardest spirit in any particular element to get. But whatever. Fishbo! We all love Fishbo. He's basically the mascot of the game. If you're in the Discord, there's a channel just for Fishbo posting. Fishbo is love. Fishbo is life. I love Fishbo because Fishbo makes Wally happy. And Wally is friend. Unfortunately for Fishbo, his passive ability... I mean, okay. When you're like level 1 or level 2 going out, Fish's food reads, when you feed a spirit in combat, Fishbo heals 10 HP. The problem is that isn't really much at all. It doesn't scale as you progress through the game. It has good synergy with Coolslime. A good early game team is Coolslime and Fishbo, because you can feed Coolslime with your crops. And how much does a... let's do the other window. Moonstone Island. I just want to see how this compares to just feeding somebody an early game. A lily pad heals 15 HP, a yarrow heals 30, hot air fruit 20, wholeberry 40, snowman plant 50. The best healing option in the game is Ghost Shroom for 100. So when you feed someone, he can heal up to 10% what they heal. I guess we'll put him in C tier. He's not F. He's got a use case. It just falls off so early in the game that, like, why bother? But, you know, we bother because he's perfect. Okay, look at him. Those little legs, that little guy. We love you, Fishbo. Your passage isn't great. A straight upgrade to Fishbo, in every single way, is Flote. Flote has Sailor's Delight. On Flote's first turn, it heals up to half his HP. And that's pretty good. That's... If you're walking around doing dungeons, you don't have a lot of healing food in your inventory, he just sustains himself. Now, you probably should have healing food. It's not hard to get or expensive at all. But in a pinch, he's not the worst. And I think that makes him a B tier. Octopup. Regenerate, as in the number. Healing pools also heal HP of spirits equal to stamina gain. So basically, at the end of a dungeon, or where you're out exploring the islands, you can find these little hot springs all over the place. And when you dip into them, you can, regenerate a little bit of stamina. It's a pretty decent chunk of stamina in the early game, pretty decent chunk of health. It's less consistent than Flote, however, because, Flote is every single fight, whereas Octopup is just going to be once a dungeon, and it isn't for as much. So we're actually going to put him in the B tier and bump Flote up to the A tier, I think. Because Flote just does the job better. And yeah. Sandcrashle, hidden treasure. 25% chance that rocks on water islands drop coins while Sandcrashle follows you. I haven't tested this. I don't know how much money Sandcrashle gets, but usually when you harvest like a chest and it drops coins, each coin's like 10 gold. So I'm going to assume this is like a 25% chance for 10 gold, and only specifically on water islands. Yeah. Sorry, bro. There are way better ways. Just fish, honestly. In the early game, you can fish. Post-game, there's only one method of making money that matters. I'm not going to spoil it, but once you save the world, Waldo's going to give you a little present that's basically infinite money printers. And you can make millions of coins in just a couple of weeks without any real effort. So anything that farms money is pointless in the late game, and in the early game, you have a way better option in our boy Snorcko. Snorko's passive ability reads, while following you, fish bite faster while fishing, which I have confirmed does stack. Fishing is a decent source of early game money. You dip your thing in the water, you wait a few seconds, you get a little mini game to play, you pump through it, and you get a fish worth a couple hundred gold coins. And that can really help you run your economy in the early game. It's a little time consuming, but Snorko makes it way faster. You run 2 or 3 Snorkos behind you while you're fishing, and you're in for a good time. Just a great way to drive your economy in the early game. Later on in this list, he might get bumped up. But for now, our next 8th tier competitor is Starsee. Friendly face. Enemy spirits are 20% easier to tame. This is huge. A lot of the formula for capturing spirits in this game is based on the enemy spirit's level compared to your level. So if you're trying to catch spirits of a lower level than you, it's easier, and if you're trying to catch spirits of a higher level to you, it's significantly harder. And Starsee can kind of balance that out a little bit. You know, if you want some reach, taming spirits, you don't do it just to get the spirit on your team. You can also tame a spirit just to get it out of the combat. And in a lot of fights, that's way faster than taking them out, burning through their armor and health bar. If you can just throw a couple of flowers onto them, make them your friend, they leave the fight, that's one less enemy you have to deal with in the fight. And Starsee extends your reach and lets you do that to higher and higher level enemies. So despite being one of these like utility abilities, I actually think there's like strong combat utility in Friendly Face, which makes Starsee our first S tier water type. Hooray! However, not in the S tier is Torble. Torble has Tough Tortoise. The first time Torble's health falls below 50%, automatically apply 5 regen. 5 regen means that 5 HP around is healed. Every round you lose a regen stack, so he'll heal 5, and then 4, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1. And in the early game, that's a lot of health, but it falls off fast. So we're going to put him in the Fishbo tier. You don't have to do anything to get it like you do with Fishbo, but it just scales off so fast. Like Torble, you're not going to want to use him past like level 15. So that makes him a C tier creature. Now, Birdbrain is a pretty silly little guy. I call him Juice Goose. If you're an Adventure Time fan, you know the guy. But his ability, Birdbrain, applies poison equal to its power to itself at the start of its first turn. On its third turn, apply all of its poison to a random enemy. So, you're probably going to have between like 8 and 20 power. So you're going to do like 12 damage to yourself turn 1, 11 damage to yourself third turn, and then on turn 3, you'll poison the enemies for 10. You do more damage to yourself, and it's just not a great game plan. I guess there could be some, if you're like on a poison island fighting poison types, he could be like a scuffed Puppox. So I won't put him in the F tier, I'll put him in the C, just being like, hey, if you're on a poison island fighting a lot of poison types, if you're in the Fall Temple, sure. But, no, who cares? Any other situation, he's just a net negative to himself. If you have a good dex, you're probably going to kill the opponent before this has a chance to go off. If you're like playing inefficiently and slogging down, sure. But if you actually know what you're doing with the deck building, you're never going to see this go off. So he's a C tier creature. Sorry, friends. Emoshroom. When 3 or less poison is applied to Emoshroom, it reduces that poison to 0. Again, decent on a poison island. And unlike our boy Birdbrain, he's not an active detriment to himself. Most poison effects do more than 3 poison, but this will be good for stuff like if you're against a Marsha, or if the enemies are using like lower strength AoE poison. He just kind of invalidates that enemy game plan. And at the end of the day, that's a B tier utility. You know, you bring him to poison islands when you're farming stuff there, when you're trying to get poison eggs. There's not really a reason to farm all poison guys are available in the wild. I guess if you want a Snaplant before the Fall Temple opens up, then Emoshroom will help you farm that. So, like, cool. Marsha, Benevolent Bane. Whenever you apply poison, apply 1 additional poison to all enemies. This stacks up pretty fast. It has negative synergy with an ability that we're going to talk about very soon. But I think it's still an A-tier ability. Don't run him with Ribbite, basically. If you're not playing Ribbite, this is just good in every single way. Every time you play your poison game plan, you get free additional poison to all your enemies, free chip damage. If you play 2 or 3 or more poison cards a turn, this starts to build very quickly, and this is a pretty solid game plan on its own. We appreciate the Marsha. He's a pretty solid lad. He's probably the 2nd best poison type. And yeah, he's a decent guy. We like him. Radlad is going to be a B tier, I think. He's good. He is a guest from Ooblets, another creature collecting game that you might know him from there. And what he does is the Rad Dish converts stamina loss from eating crops into stamina gain. So any crops from the Poison Islands that hurt your stamina, or it says crops specifically. I don't know if this applies to Osano's Dish of the Day. If she gives you a negative stamina food, I'm going to assume it doesn't, because that's not a crop. But if it does, it reduces the risk of face checking her meals. So that's nice. Yeah. I don't know. They're yeah. Let me look at the so I should do it. Well, I should do it in the main window so you guys can see as well. I don't know why I'm doing this stuff on other windows. Moonstone Island props. Let's take a quick look. -10 on the Mandrake, -10 on the Nightshade. Not great, not great. Grumpkin, they all seem to be in the negative. Is there any like -40s here? There's a negative. No. Okay. And his ability reads crop, so probably doesn't lead into concoctions. I mean, still, it's a positive. We're not going to put him in the seat here. He's not like a detriment to you. It's not great, but it's something. In an emergency, you could just eat a jag of poison crops. Might save your life someday. That's a B tier ability. I kind of mentioned Ribbite in Marsha's, but we're actually going to. How do I add another tier to this list? Boop. Add a row above. Oops. Ah. Ribbite is by far the most powerful spirit in the game. There's no denying it. There's no other consideration. Ribbite's ability, Bouncing Bane, reads, whenever an enemy dies, transfer any poison it has to a random enemy. This is, pardon my language, fucking nuts. Ribbite can easily stack dozens of poison onto an enemy in a turn if you're playing a deck with like a lot of mana resource. Ribbite is just a one-man killing machine. Whenever an enemy dies, so this starts at the start of the turn, your poison goes off, right? Say you put 60 poison on an enemy. the damage hits, it kills that enemy, it bounces to another. Before the start turn resolves, the damage ticks again. This time it does 59 damage because poison wears off once after it ticks. And then it jumps to the third enemy and ticks for 58 damage, possibly killing that guy too. So, like a strong Ribbite deck, you can apply 50 is like a small number. I've had turns where I've put like 6,000 poison on an enemy turn 1 and just had it instantly delete the whole team. The only risk is it's hard to figure out the order the game is going to proc the poison damage in. So let's say you have 6,000 poison on one enemy and 1,000 poison on another and 1 poison on another. There's a chance that the 1 poison will proc, and then the 6,000 will proc, and then the 6,000 poison will jump to the enemy with 1 poison and not go off again, stopping the chain in its track. So this is why I said don't run Marsha with Ribbite, because spreading poison indiscriminately and in AoE completely ruins the Ribbite game plan. But as long as you're only doing single target stacking poison, Ribbite will kill any enemy in the game. I think I was like level 30 when I killed the level 60 final boss, because Ribbite just ate through the whole enemy line, no questions asked. Yeah, just an unstoppable spirit, far and away the best in the game. No one even compares, and that's why he gets a tier of his own at the top of the list. After that, it's kind of disappointing to look at our man Snaplant. Potent poison! Apply 1 poison to a random enemy when at full health. I think this just applies at the start of the turn. It's not like when you do poisoning. Sure. Basically a downgrade to Marsha in every way. Poison is the best status effect in the game. When we get to the fire guys, we'll talk about why burn kind of sucks. So the fact that 1 poison to a random will put it in maintenance mode. It'll stop the poison from ticking down, but it's just chip damage at the end of the day. We don't really care. Yeah, I can't put it in the same tier as, like, Ankylo. So we're gonna put him down here in the C tier. He's better than Birdbrain. He's better than Torble. I'm gonna keep them by type. And in fact, I'm just gonna keep them in the order they're on the wiki. But just know that, like, he's a high C tier, because, like, it's a better game plan than fucking Dropple. But not that much better. He's got to be at full health. It's only 1 damage. It's going to fall off next round. The next round after that, it'll be to someone else. It's just whatever. Unlike Taddle. Swampskin. Taddle applies 1 poison to all enemies each time its armor is reduced. This is fine. Lots of enemies will bash you, and AoE poison, again, don't run it with Ribbite. But if you're running like a Marshall plan, or you just want to use Taddle because he's a cool guy, his ability's fine. You'll probably get like, I don't know, 5 free poison on the enemies in a game. It'll be like 5 damage and then 4 damage, and then you'll win the fight. So, like, it's not nothing. You can put him in the B tier. He's worse than Ankylo. He's worse than Coolslime. Otherwise, he's probably the best one in this tier. So, we appreciate him. Toxitoe. Socks on. When following you, the spirit allows the warp whistle to be used a 2nd time per day. This is a really good ability. Is it A or is it S tier? I'm going to put him in A for now. So the warp whistle is an item that you pick up in the middle of town at the goddess statue. You play a little ditty on it, linked to the past style. It teleports you back to the town. Later on, you can get 2 other placeable items that also create teleport points. But you can only use the whistle once a day, so you can't really use them as like a teleport network until you get Toxitoe. Once you get Toxitoe, though, you can play the flute, teleport to your sapling, or teleport to your Fishbo statue, and then play it again to get back in the town. It's just a great way to cross the map quickly. You can get anywhere. So, you know what? As far as time saved, he's got to be S tier. He can save you tens of minutes. He can save you almost an entire in-game day just with his funny little song. He's a great little guy. A good addition to the team if you're just trying to get around fast. We appreciate you, Toxitoe. You are a brave soldier. Continue on your merry way. And on to Trunkle we go. Trunkle has the Fungal Fumes ability. At the start of this spirit's first turn, automatically apply 3 poison to all enemies. So this is better than Taddle, but worse than Marsha. Marsha could apply, we're going to say like an average of 2 poison to the enemies on the first turn, and then like 2 or 3 every turn afterwards. This is just 3 poison once. So this is 3 damage, 5 damage, 2 damage for 5, and then 1 damage for 6. So this is up to 18 damage per game for free. This is fine. Is it Marsha fine or is it Toxitoe fine? I think it's Toxitoe fine. They're both pretty competitive with each other. The fact that you get the poison all on the first turn guaranteed, I think makes him better than Taddle, but not by much. Speaking of better than Taddle, better than Toxitoe, Shrubbin enables a game plan. Topiary target. Enemy spirits are more likely to target this spirit. So the use case for Shrubbin is you put him in, you stack his armor, and you stack his health, and hopefully he just eats a ton of aggro for you. Right? So you run Shrubbin, you have like a squishy guy that you put all your points into a tower or speed, and then you run Shrubbin so that you don't get hard punished for it. It's not guaranteed. Enemies will still attack your other targets. They'll still eat shit to AoE. So you still have to put a little bit of tankiness into them. But the fact that you can assume that most enemies are going to attack Shrubbin means that you can play a more offensive game plan with your other units, which makes him firmly in the A class as a support tool. You're not going to be doing crazy damage with him himself. Poison scales with power, and if you run this ability, you're going to want to run health. But, you know, he can do some stuff while eating some damage, and we appreciate him for that. Bless you, Shrubbin. You are the most selfless hero we've ever known. Are you the most valuable hero? Probably not, but in a show of respect, we'll leave you in the A tier. Armbot, with the Long Arms ability, increases the item pickup range by 2 tiles. I'm sure there are niche cases where this does something, but who gives a shit? It takes like 0.5 seconds to walk 2 tiles. If you're in a mine and you don't want to break a rock and you want to open a chest, who cares? Who cares, Armbot? Just stay down there in the F tier where you belong. You're a cool, funny guy. I'm really happy to see you walking around behind Zed all the time. You're never going to be in my party, though. Unlike Armbot, though, Barkbite probably going to end up in my party every once in a while. Dig Dog. While following you, this spirit allows a second mine to be found on each island. We mess with the dog. We love a good bark bite. So how the mines work in this game is that when you walk around and you hit on rocks, there's a % chance that it spawns a mine. Only 1 mine per island. 3 on the Moonstone Island because it counts as 4 islands, but stuff doesn't spawn on the one with all the houses. So that leaves you like 90 mines available into the game, and then once you harvest them all for their loot and ore, they never respawn. You never get them again. They're just gone forever. Barkbite doubles that. You get about 180. Which you don't need that many. Like, you have all the resources you need after like 30 mines. More if you want to like farm for all the little, you know, crafting recipes or whatever. The main utility of Barkbite is that it allows you to get more mines close to the starting island. So you don't have to range as far to do mining days. So he saves you a pretty fair amount of time. You know, you get to hang out closer to home, you get to mine some extra resources, you don't have to fly way out to the edges of the map, to the 4th or 5th rings to do it. He saves you a bit of time, that makes him a firm A tier in my books. It's what we're looking for in a utility ability. You know, nothing game breaking, but we appreciate you, Barkbite. You're a very good boy. Speaking of good boys, Breadmoss. He's a cutie. I love his animations, him popping up in and out of that toaster. We stand Breadmoss. His ability, however, is Burnt Toast. At the start of its 3rd turn, gain charge equal to the number of charge cards that have been exhausted. So charge is an electric-only card, and it reads, spend 1 energy, gain 2 charge, retain exhaust. So what charge does is every instance of damage on a card increases the damage by 1 per charge. So you play a charge card, you gain 2 charge on the unit. Your tackle goes from 5 damage to 7 damage, or your bite, instead of doing 4 damage 3 times or 4 times or whatever, it does 6 damage 3 or 4 times or whatever. So in a multi-hit build, which basically electric, earth, and fire, and ice, I think, all have pretty efficient multi-hit cards, charge is pretty strong. The question is, though, how many charge cards will you have spent by turn 3 in the average fight? It's a 3rd of your mana to get a damage boost. It's a very specific game plan. If it's your game plan, I guess it's A tier. He's an enabler for this game plan. You gain half of all the charge value you've gotten up to the game, basically, since a charge card gives 2 charges, and this is equal to the number, so this is 1 per card. Let's put him in the B tier. It's just okay. It's extra damage. You can get like a cool 3rd turn pop off. You also have other additional charge cards. But if you don't have other charge cards in your hand on turn 3, it's just worse than the turns you've had prior. Well, not exactly, because you only lose 1 charge around. So let's say turn 1, you're playing a charge deck. You play 2 charge cards, you're at 4 charge. Turn 2 happens, you tick down to 3, you only draw 1 charge card. You pop it, you're at 5. And then the next turn you go down to 4, and you pop up to 7. So that's like a 75% buff over what you would have had on that turn going into that. That's not nothing. But I think it's firmly B tier. I think I'd rather play an Ankylo Rage plan almost any time. As far as 3rd turns pop-offs go, it's just safe and kind of mid, right? And that's what a B tier is. It's just safe and kind of mid. Bull Bot. Totally lit. Great name. Trash ability. Illuminates dark rooms and dungeons. The dungeons in this game are not randomized. They're set floor plans. You're always going to get the same 30 dungeons every playthrough. There's like 2 dungeons where this is going to be relevant in. And it just kind of ruins the puzzle of those dungeons. Like, that's the fun of the dark dungeons, that they're dark. He's not useless, I guess, if you're having trouble seeing and like you want the help in the dungeons. He's got a use case, but you're only gonna use, and you're not even gonna know that that's the dungeon you got until you're in it. So what are you gonna do? Walk into the dungeon, see that it's the one where this matters, leave, place down your burn, and get Bullbot? Probably not. Yeah, let's put him back down to F tier. Whatever, Bullbot, you're fine. But this is my list, and I'm never going to value that. So I'm going to put him there. Sorry, if you're a Bullbot stan and you want him in the C tier, I'll hear the argument. He's not going higher than that for any reason whatsoever. Burgloon! is a cute little guy. We appreciate him. He's like the Mario Tanuki suit, with a little bit of lightning twist. Spirit Spoils. Whenever you win a battle, receive coins equal to the combined enemy level. So in the early game, this is like, I don't know, 2 to 30 coins in a fight. In the late game, you can get like up to 180 for a battle. How long do the battles take? I think you'd rather go fishing, but if you're doing a lot of combat anyway, this adds up. I think he's worth running. I'm going to put him in the A tier. As an economy engine, he's probably as good as Snorcko. Better in a way, because fishing takes time on the in-game clock. When you're in combat, that freezes. Enemies don't spawn very fast in this game, though, so it's like about as many times per hour as you can fish. I'd say in the late game, he's exactly equal to Snorcko, and in the early game, he's a little bit worse. So with that in mind, I'm going to keep him in the A tier, because I think it's better than bread moss. Just as, I guess that's not comparable, it's a combat ability. What's a time-saving ability in the other row? Yeah, maybe. I could hear the argument for bumping this guy down to B tier. He's worse than Snorcko in most situations. And again, money's really easy to get in this game once you get to the post-game, so he starts to fall. Let's bump him down to the B tier. He's a cool guy, he's cute. I wanted to give him the A because I like his design. But at the end of the day, he's just not that much, you know? Pass a B. Out of the 3 starters, Ankylo being one of them, Capacity is probably the strongest of all of them in combat. His ability Recharge reads the first time Capacity falls to 0 HP, its HP is restored to 10. And at the start of the game, that's like 50% of his HP. He starts the game with 20, he dies, he pops back up with 10. It's pretty good. If you mess up your math and you accidentally get killed in a turn, he pops back up, he survives, he maintains you to the fight, you can stabilize with healing items. So I think that makes him an A tier. Falls off as the game goes on, but he's got pretty powerful electric card options to stabilize with. And yeah, he's just a reasonable little dude to run. We got no problems with the B. Cumulo. When I was talking about, it was a poison type, right? Cumulo reads, at the start of your turn, remove 1 armor from all enemies. This is a straight upgrade to the unit that removes 1 armor from 1 enemy. Dropple was the one. This is AoE armor removal. It's pretty decent armor removal. 1 armor from every single enemy. You can plan around that every single turn. It might get you to some thresholds to stagger people you couldn't otherwise stagger. He's just a pretty solid little B tier guy. You're probably not building your deck around this plan or whatever, but when the numbers line up, it feels nice, and that makes him a B tier in my books. Kiwi Watt is an egg-exclusive electric guy, so you're probably not going to see this guy for a while, but he's got the Fizzy Friend ability. Creates a charge card every round and adds it to your hand unless your hand is full. Charge card is, as we spoke to it before, 1 energy, you gain 2 charge, it has exhaust, and it has retain. So the problem and the benefit of a charged deck game plan is that eventually you run out of charge cards in your deck. Let's say you're playing a super hyper dedicated, this deck only does charge. You play a card that 7 charges, we'll say, in the deck, and you play 1 card that is 1 damage, deals your power, is affected 4x by charge. I think that's, I'll have to look at that card. Nah, I don't really care that much. That's a pretty solid game plan, and this is an enabler for it. It lets you continuing to scale charge throughout the game. Even after you exhaust all your charge cards, you get 1 every round. You tick down 1 charge every turn, he gains 2, he gives you net positive in charge. That's an A tier for me, buddy. He enables a game plan that otherwise doesn't necessarily work. You have to spend the 1 mana every round, the 1 energy, so like it can come at a cost if your deck isn't built around it. But if you build your game plan around this, he's tied for the best enabler. And the man tied with him is Snom. Snom's ability reads, "Take this." Applies 1 charge to itself at the beginning of each round. So unlike Kiwiwat, it's a free charge. But it's only 1, so you lose it every round too. So the benefit of this, though, is say you play a charge card on Snom, he goes up to 2 charge. At the start of the next turn, he loses a charge, but then he gains another from this passive, keeping him at net 2 charge. He will always keep as many charge stacks as you put on him, no matter how long the game goes on for, at absolutely 0 cost. So he scales less fast. He doesn't scale up and up like Kiwiwat does, but Kiwiwat has to pay for it. Whereas Snom is just always locked in, completely for free, no energy cost, which is why I say I think he's exactly tied with Kiwiwat. He does the same thing worse, but cheaper. So he's just a discount Kiwiwat. He's just the Kirkland brand Kiwiwat. And if you're playing a deck that doesn't have a lot of energy resources, if you don't have a Psychic or a Dark type constantly cheating you out extra energy, you'd want to run him instead of a Kiwiwat. Because Kiwiwat's just too expensive for a deck that doesn't have an energy engine. Sparky is, I'm going to say it, the only good creature to come from a dungeon. Now, he's not great. Let's not get too excited. He's better than Dropple, Snaplant, and Longlog. What Sparky does is his ability says Overload. It sets a random enemy's card to exhaust. So, we're going to put him in B. This doesn't really matter for most fights in the game. You're usually not going to go on long enough for this to, like, do anything. But the absolute dream with Sparky is that you exhaust all of the enemy's cards, and then they have no cards to play, and you can't do anything, right? Every turn, one of their cards gets exhaust, they play it, it disappears from their deck. That's one less option they have later. If it hits the right cards, you can take out a pretty scary card. You could take out, like, one of the big AoEs in the Water Guys boss fight. You could screw over a Guardian's game plan. This is just pretty okay. And that makes him B tier. The absolute chief of all the temple drafts. Yep. that's as high as they go, at least as passives are concerned. So let's head into the fire types. We got Bone Fire. Combustion Engine. If an enemy is banished from Burn, start your next turn with 1 extra energy. Burn sucks. It's a bad game plan, at least compared to the other equivalent options. So the problem with Burn, it works exactly like Poison, but with a caveat. Poison ticks, and then ticks down by 1. Burn ticks at the start of the turn, and then drops off half of its stacks. Why? Like, there's 1 card in the game that manipulates Burn. Fan Flames doubles the enemy's burn stacks. Sounds scary, right? Well, Poison has a card that by default doubles the enemy poison stacks. Just as good. You can upgrade it to triple the enemy poison stacks, even better. And then there's another card you can get, a secret card, that octuples the enemy poison stacks. So Poison has better support cards, and as we're going to see as we go through the fire list, Poison also has better support abilities in Marsha, Toxitoe, and Ribbite. So why would you run a Burn game plan when it's just blatantly worse than the other condition damage option? It doesn't really make sense. That said, if you think fire's cool, and you want to run a burn game plan, Bonefire might be the best enabler for that. Yeah, we can talk about Flambit and Sheep later. But at the end of the day, Bonefire is the best unit to run a bad game plan. Because at least he can cheat out some extra energy. We're gonna see. He's getting a little too populated. We're gonna. Oh, this is gonna hurt when I get to my boy Sheep, huh? Yeah, you don't want to run a burn game plan. If you do, you're probably running Bonefire, but you don't wanna. Karki! Firefoot. While following you, your walking speed increases by 1% every second up to 20%. Resets when you stop walking. So, this is okay when you're like walking around Moonstone Island, right? But the problem is, most islands in the game, you're not going to be walking in a straight line for 20 seconds. Like, that's insane. Most islands are pretty small. There's a lot of obstacles. You got to navigate around. You may have to stop to pathfind. I'd say in an average situation, this is like a 5% net increase to your move speed. Which is fine. Ricky's a B tier. He gets you places faster if you're farming. On a rainy day, you'd rather run 3 Claudios, but if you're walking around and it's dry as a bone out, you're really desperate to get some resources, you could slot some car keys in on a sunny day and zoom around the map. I guess stacks up to 60%. He's fine. He's fine. Flamane, Lucky Light. Sometimes turns fire hazard damage into stamina gain. So hazard damage is when you're on a poison, fire, or lightning island, you occasionally take a little bit of stamina damage. On poison islands, you take it whenever you walk into a cloud. It can be dodged and avoided. On lightning islands, it happens every X number of seconds. You take a little burst of stamina damage. And on fire damage, you're just constantly getting ticked down for stamina damage. And you can eat food to counter it. You can equip charms to reduce the amount of damage or even stop it completely. But in the early game, when you're walking around fire islands, this just saves you some resources. This saves you some time. You don't have to chomp down as many stone fruits, or hopefully, if you're on a fire island, you have better stamina food than stone fruits. Hopefully, it's like midsummer, early fall, and you have better options, and you've crafted some charms. But like, there's just a percent chance that he stops you from getting ticked down. You don't drop as fast. You don't have to spend as much time eating. He's just fine. We appreciate you, Flaming. I wish I knew off the top of my head what the percent chance was, because that changes this considerably. And in fact, with that in mind, I'm going to bump him down to C tier, just because I don't know how often it happens. And you can just eat food anyway. It doesn't change anything. He's just a small convenience. Probably not worth the slot though. So he's not actively detrimental to you. He doesn't do nothing. So he's not an F tier. But he's pretty definitionally a C tier guy. Flambit. At the start of each of your turns, applies 1 burn to each enemy. So again, burn's the worst status effect in the game. It ticks down by half every turn. I think rounded down. So, like, I guess mathematically this could like stop you from. At the end of the day, it's only ever 1 damage around per enemies, up to 3 damage around throughout the fight. This is like fine. Where did I put? He's about the same amount of damage as Trunkle's gonna be over the course of a fight, but of a worse damage type. You're not gonna be able to stack it well. Yeah, I don't think I can put him above Bonepire. This is just the fire types aren't bad. Burn's just a bad game plan for them, right? If you're running a fire type, you want to be running, instead of this garbage, the card that does damage multiple times and then draws more cards. It's a 2-mana card. Running that with a charge build is actually like a pretty reasonable game plan. You could run like a Kiwi Watt, a fire type, probably Sinjin. We'll get to that later. Maybe a Spiraling or a Pomom. And then you run your mana engine, psychic or dark creature. So that's a good game plan. But burn is just garbage. You never want to play a burn build. So these burn abilities just unfortunately cap out at C tier. Just as good as it gets. Prickly. Lucerna. My mistake. Lucerna is Rekindle. At the end of combat, Lucerna restores 50% of HP lost. So, unlike Flote, who restores 50% of his max HP, Lucerna restores 50% of the HP lost during the fight. So, no matter what, this is worse than Flote, right? Because he can't really... The most you can heal with him is like 49.9% of your HP, right? Because if you lost 100%, you'd just be dead. Actually, I never tested this. If you take... Say you have 100 health on Lucerna. You take 99 damage. You feed him food to heal back up to 100. And you take 99 again. HP lost, is it 99 or 198? Interesting to test. You might be able to full heal. Unfortunately, that's still not very good. It's not nothing. It's not detrimental. It's something you're going to benefit from every fight, which is why he's a B tier. But it's just not anything you're super excited about. It's not like what you're building around. It's just a firmly neutral, fine ability to proc. It's just whatever. Prickly is someone that I didn't get till very late in the game. Prickly is an egg-only spirit, so I never really got to test him very much, but his ability Needler is at the start of combat, Prickly applies Sharp equal to its power to itself. Sharp. What Sharp does is when enemies hit you, they take damage equal to the Sharp. It's like Thorns in other games. On a Shrubbin, Sharp's a pretty interesting game plan. You have 3 Prickly, Sharp's a pretty interesting game, but you can't guarantee the enemy's gonna hit Prickly, right? So you don't want to like build around this or anything. But it's like a pretty solid decent. We're gonna toss it in the B tier. The enemy's probably gonna hit Prickly once or twice during the combat. He'll do his power to them in damage. That's fine. It's just free chip damage. It's not something to build around. It's not something to worry about. It can do some work in longer fights, and in a Guardian fight, you could maybe do this a few times. He uses big AoE abilities. He takes a little bit of damage back. I wonder how this interacts with multi-hit. I should have tested this before I started this tier list. In some fights with enemies with multi-hit, if this procs, that could be good. Either way, though, again, I don't think it's like you never want to plan around a Sharp build, right? It's just like a nice bonus that he brings into the battle. It's neutrally fine, which is why he is firmly in the B tier. Sheemp is the starter I picked. I saw that little bucktooth. I couldn't resist. He was the cutest starter, and he's got the ability Hot to Touch. Anytime Sheemp takes fire damage, it applies burn equal to its power to a random enemy. I don't know if I ever triggered this passive a single time. It's not nothing. We're going to put him in the C tier. The problem is that the only time that you ever are going to be in a long fight against fire types is like in the Guardian fight in a fire dungeon, right? By the time I got to that point in the game, I was reliably killing the enemies on first turn every single fight. So I never saw... If you're not like a sweaty power gamer like me, you'll probably see this happen a lot more. There'll be like 8 fire dungeons that you go through out of your 30 dungeons. And, you know, burn sucks, but it's free damage. But burn sucks, and it's a random enemy, not the enemy that hit you. And it's only when you take fire damage, so again, only going to happen in a few specific places in the game. It's basically just nothing. This ability might not even... If I put this in F tier, F tier is looking pretty lonely. Yeah, because I have Longlog in the F tier. Longlog does something. This is just like 95% of the time you don't have a passive, is how this reads. And when it happens, it's not even something that you're excited to... Wow. 15 burn. And then 7 burn the next turn. And then 3 burn the turn after that. And then 1 burn. So that ends up being like 25 burn damage. 1 in every 100 fights. Yeah, it's just not anything to get excited about. But something to get excited about is our boy Sinjin. So Sinjin has Burn Bright, and it increases either power or speed by 1 and loses 3 HP every turn. 3 HP every turn sounds like bad, but like when you get into like the late game, your health pool's probably in like the 100 to 150 area, and the enemies hit for so much that it doesn't matter if you're playing a multi-hit build. The only problem with Burn Bright is that it's power or speed. If it was just power, it'd be better. Or if it was just speed, it'd be better. Because then you could plan. You could either make him a basher, or you could make him a multi-hit damager. I was going to put him in the A tier. I'm kind of talking myself down. It's just not consistent enough to build her. I'm still going to put him in the A tier because it's looking pretty lonely up here. This can be crazy. If like 3 or 4 turns in a row you get a power up and then you start multi-hitting like crazy with flamethrower or whatever, then like this is a strong little buff. He can do some damage. It's definitely net positive, like considering the health you lose compared to the damage you deal. I think you're pretty happy out of all the fire types to be running a Sinjin. Until you get yourself down to the Spireling. Guest characters in this game are usually pretty good, it turns out. So Spireling is from Slay the Spire, and his ability is Slay with Fire. When this spirit makes a spirit dizzy, it applies 1 rage to itself and burn equal to its power to the dizzy spirit. So it's just... If he just had the second half of that, he would be infinitely better than Sheep. Because it's the same amount of burn, but it's to a targeted enemy who is dizzy. A dizzy spirit takes 1.5 times damage. So it's 1.5 times stronger than Sheep's by default, and to a targeted enemy. But then he also gives himself rage. So I talked about Ankylo earlier, and the problem with range on Ankylo was that you didn't have control over when it activated. So you'd rather just play a rage card rather than use the passive. Spiraling doesn't have that problem. You choose when you dizzy a spirit. You choose when Spiraling specifically is the one who dizzies the spirit, and you get the rage while they're dizzy. The double damage you take, it doesn't matter. The enemy's dizzy. They're not going to attack back. I'm going to toss him up in the S tier. This is nuts. If you bash down an enemy with Spiraling and you have a flamethrower in your hand, then you're just going to burn that boy down for crazy damage. 1.5 times because he's dizzy, 2 times because you have the rage. That's triple damage, baby. More than that. It's just good. It's just a strong, solid burster. If you're going to run a generic damaging fire type, there's almost no competition. Almost, but not quite, because we got Paw Bomb next. Pabom has the passive Exploding Puppies. He's a guest character again. Who would have thunk it? From... Oh my god, I love this. Cassette Beasts. Cassette Beasts. So his ability is, if your hand isn't full, add 1 Explode Plus card to your hand at the beginning of each one. We're going to drop him in A tier for now. Let's look at the Explode Plus card, yeah? Spirit cards. Boom. So, Explode deals 6 times power fire damage to yourself and 1 target, but he gets Explode Plus, so 8 times power fire damage to 1 target and yourself. So this is like the suicide bomber build, right? You run Palmon. Every turn you get an Explode Plus. You build up a bunch of power. You maybe put some charge on. You play Explode Plus. You nuke an enemy and you nuke yourself. This is good. This is decent. The nice thing about this game is that you can plan around, right? You can make sure that you're not going to one-shot yourself with this by making sure you have a little more health than the Explode Plus is going to do to you. Health, whenever you put points into health, it gets stronger every level. It's not linear. So, like, the first point in the health stat is, like, 10 health, and the next point's, like, 12 or something, and then the next one's, like, 14. And the numbers aren't exact, but it jumps higher and higher every time. Whereas power just scales linearly. So you can get to a point with the numbers in this game, or without going too far out of the way, that your health is easily more than 8 times your power. So you play your Paw Bomb, you play your Explode Plus, he nukes himself, he nukes an enemy, and then you just feed the puppy a little snack to pop him back up to full. And life just keeps on going. You keep on bursting, you keep on popping. It's a little more costly than the Spiraling playstyle because you have to spend that time healing yourself. So I think Spiraling does net more damage in total, so we're going to leave Pawbomb in the A tier. But it's like a pretty viable playstyle. You're not going to feel bad about running the Pawbomb build. Ice Spirits. So you get Ice Spirits in winter of the first year is your first opportunity to get them. So I didn't play around much with any of these guys, I'm going to be honest with you. The problem is that, like, you get them, they're, like, level 10 guys, your whole team's, like, level 40 at this point, like, well, probably, like, level 30. But it's not important. They're far behind, you gotta spend time and effort to catch them up. So, like, they gotta be pretty good to be worth the investment, right? And the fact of the matter is, like, most of the ice cards are, like, fine. There's nothing that I'm, like, too excited to do with any of these game plans, so I never really messed with these guys very much. So this, out of all the sections in this, where I tested, I would say everyone up here except for, like, Prickly and, like, yeah, no, pretty much everyone Brickley, honestly, I've played with. I got a lucky Kiwiwat really early. I didn't get Ankylo to the very end, but I was excited to try him out when I did get him, so I went out of my way to. I didn't touch any of these Ice Spirits, you guys. So this is all just kind of theory crafting. Bandicle, Ice Gold. Earn more coins from battles. Doesn't say here how many coins. I was already so ludicrously rich by this point in the game that I didn't really consider this worth trying. He doesn't increase your power. You're probably making most of your money from fishing or farming or yeah. I'm just gonna put him in the. He's fine. He's definitely not F tier. Let's look at some other money making guys and, like, see how competitive he is with those game plans. I honestly can't imagine he gives more money than the Raccoon gives, since the Raccoon's scales with level, and this is probably just like a percentage. Yeah, we're gonna put him in the C tier. If someone wants to issue a correction down in the comments below, if this is like, 200 plus goal to fight, then he could be better than the raccoon. But I can't imagine there's a world where that's the case. So I'm going to put him in C tier because we need somewhere to put him. Money is not a problem in this game. Again, in the post game, you get printers that just fucking pour cash into your pockets every single day. This is not something you're concerned about pretty much ever. Bongwin, Frostlayer. If Bongwin isn't dizzy, its armor increases by 1 up to its maximum every turn. I'd say this is a better than average passive. So your armor total in the late game is probably between like 15 and 20. The enemies will chip it for like 5 to 6 to more at a time, depending on their speed. And Bongwin will take you up once every turn. If the enemy's doing like 5 armor to you a turn, he'll dizzy you in 4 turns. Bongwin makes it 5 turns instead. That's pretty good. That's pretty valuable. It's better than average for a passive. It's just a nice defensive game plan to run on your guy. And yeah. I see Double Scoop. Draw 2 additional cards from this spirit's deck at the beginning of combat. I want to put this in the A tier as well. Again, if you're playing optimally, you're running 8 cards per spirit. So this draws a quarter of your spirit's deck. If you have a specific game plan you want to run with IC, this makes it very consistent that you're probably going to get those cards in the first turn of combat. I wonder if this happens before or after the mulligan. I have my 2 thoughts of that. If it's before the mulligan, then you get 2 additional cards to mulligan, which is great. If it's after the mulligan, you can mulligan to target IC cards, and then get more IC cards. I don't know which is better. Either way, it's very good. We appreciate the double scoop. You know, whenever you're heading by the ice cream shop, you take the 2 scoops. And we're happy with it. Punkshoe! Catching Z's. When the spirit is following you, it is a chance to gain a level when you go to bed before midnight. I'm gonna put this in... So I'm of 2 minds of this. So, Honkshoe, you could basically just put yourself in a loop where you wake up, you go to bed, 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 you wake up, you go to bed. And like in terms of like real life hours spent, Honkshoe could be the fastest max level spirit in the game. This comes at a big cost to in-game time though, because you can stay up till 2 in the morning without any problems, but if you want to benefit from Honkshoe, you gotta go to bed before midnight. So you're giving up 2 hours of your in-game day every day for this. So if you're like out actively trying to conquer dungeons and stuff, you're not going to want to do this. But if you're grinding up for the post-game, it could be pretty useful. But if you're married in the game, and you just wake up, go to bed, 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 your spouse will get angry at you for not spending any time with them. And every couple days, you're going to tick down a little bit in the relationship meter. So you'll have to, like, re-spend your time later rebuilding your bond with your spouse, so it's not free. We're going to put you in the B tier, Honkshoe. Getting higher level ups are pretty expensive. If you want to get a creature to max level without spending weeks and weeks messing around with crops and fighting in combat and doing whatever else, it's a thing you can do. If you want to do it before you get married, there's a certain benefit to that. We're going to put Honkshoe firmly in the B tier. He's fine. He's whatever. You're not going to... Once you're max level, it doesn't do anything. So with that in mind, we'll leave him there. We'll leave him there. It's fine. Real life time saved on leveling up, we'll call a net neutral ability. It's cool. No, we'll put him in C. We're not really happy to. We'd rather have a better ability. It's just not useless. And so he's not F tier, but he doesn't go higher than C, I don't think. Higgy, Gift Giver. When this spirit is in your party, spirits that are banished in battle still gain EXP. Right there next to Honkshu. You're basically planning for failure when you run Higgy, right? You're saying, like, I'm gonna screw this fight up, my spirits are gonna die, I still want to gain XP. Just play good. He's not nothing. You might mess up sometimes and still you'll happy to still get the XP on your backline units that went out. But, like, you don't want to plan around using this ability. In an optimal scenario, this is never going to trigger. It's fine when it happens. You don't want it to happen. Yeah. Sorbaton. At the start of combat, apply 1 freeze to all enemies. Let's pretend I know what freeze does. Because, again, I didn't really mess around with these spirits. Moonstone Island cards, spirit cards. There's nowhere on the wiki that just lists what freeze does. Applies 1 freeze, applies 2 freeze, applies 3 freeze, applies 4 freeze. Okay, guys. Let's go test this. I don't feel like I'd be doing you guys a service if I didn't check this. Moonstone Island. I guess this just became a regular live stream, huh? Okay. Boop boop boo, boop boop boo, boop boop boo, boop boop boo, boo boo, boop boop boo, boop boo. Boop 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 boo. Launching the game. I was gonna not edit this video at all, but I guess if I'm doing this, I'm gonna have to edit the darn video. Blah blah blah. I don't want to do that. Hey guys, it's me, Alchin, Alex, Altoon, whatever the hell you want to call me. Oops. Since I wasn't recording my face for this, I didn't bother turning my stream light on. There we go. And game capture, capture any full, capture specific window, capture Moonstone Island. Are you gonna pick up the game? Good. Okay. Who are we gonna leave behind? I guess that must be you. Come on now, just leave the party. Alright. So we're gonna quickly test what freeze does. So, welcome to the party. Transfer to medallion. Let's just go get into a fight. Yeah. So, assuming that this is a pretty good debuff, 1 freeze to all enemies every round could be pretty decent. Totally depending on what this does. So, luckily we have the eye with us, so we should see more enemies than we otherwise see. So who knows how long this is going to take, but hopefully someone spawns soon. There we go. Alright, let's see what this does. Deals 25% less damage with attacks, reduced by 1 per turn. So does it stack just in duration? Or does it stack with how much less damage it does? Do I have any other cards that do freeze? Hold on a second. You wait here, Fluffox. We'll be back. We're just gonna check his deck really quick. Let's see if we can stack that up and see what it does. Apply 3 freeze. Okay, we do have an option for that. We'll just draw to it then. I shouldn't want to draw my whole deck in 1 turn and then not get anything. Okay. Come back, come back! Oh, good. Okay. Okay. Let's see. I don't think this is going to apply to Bash at all. You maybe do a damaging ability? Could you maybe try and do a damaging ability, brother? You have 4 earth damage. Okay, so this is either going to do 3 damage. It's going to do nothing because I have armor. Shit. Is he doing it too? Missed the slime? Damn. Okay, hold on. Aw, I can't cast it with my own guys? Whatever. Okay, so it seems to only stack with duration, though. Okay. Make sure to change this back to any full screen window so that next time I play a game I don't bait myself. Then we go back to the internet stream. So it only stacked with duration. It's 1 freeze to, is it all enemies? The start of combat. So first round, every single fight, the enemies deal 25% less damage. I mean, that's pretty good. Is it A tier good or B tier good? I think just like considering the average ability, we'll put it in A tier. This is a pretty strong defensive ability. Against certain fights, this could save your life. Against the last boss, against some of the higher Infinity Dungeons fight, that's like a not insignificant amount of damage. You can apply more freeze as the fight goes on. That's a pretty solid defensive game plan. Yeah, we're happy with that. Whistler! Fresh Pow. On snowy days, spirits gain 20% more XP from battles. So, I guess, again, like I said earlier, battling is not the best way to gain experience in the game. Most of the experience you're going to gain is going to be from crops. Now, I think if you're doing dungeons with a Whistler in the party, that's like not insignificant XP. So if you like plan your dungeons around on a snowy day, this could be nice. We're gonna say that it deserves better than Hig. We're gonna put him in the B tier. You're not upset that he has this ability. You'd probably rather him have something better. But yeah, it's just a game plan. It's cool. You can do it. I might at the end of this, I might bump him down to C once I see what all the full list looks like. But for now, I'm pretty happy with him in the B tier. Also getting the B tier is Edie. Snowball. Any sharp applied to this spirit is doubled. I'm going to assume, for the sake of things, the only source of sharp I've ever seen in the game is Prickly's passive. I'm going to assume that ice spirits have sharp cards that just, like maybe some like icicle stuff that they plant around them. But the problem is Yeety isn't shrubbing, so you can't guarantee the enemies are going to hit him. So he's not a great... Actually, you know what? He's worse than Prickly. Prickly gets the sharp for free. It comes at no cost to you. With Yeety, you have to actually play sharp cards. And I just can't picture a world where that's like a game plan that you want to do. Like maybe you spend your whole turn, you apply like 30 sharp to Yeety, he doubles it to 80, and you're like, oh man, the enemy's gonna double attack and he's gonna take 60 damage every time he hits me. But then he just attacks another unit instead. You just whiffed your whole turn planning for something that wasn't going to come to fruition. So, yeah, I think he caps out at C, honestly. Maybe Sharp is a better game plan than I'm giving credit for. Maybe he gets bumped up to B tier. but you can't control the enemy AI. And he's got no way to encourage the enemies to attack himself. So unless you're in like a crazy AoE fight, I just don't think this has the consistency to put him any higher. And that's why he's going to sit where he is. Mirdini! Disappearing Act. When its armor is reduced to 0, it automatically applies 1 intangible to itself. So what I think intangible does, if I remember correctly, is that it makes it so that you don't take more than 1 damage from a hit? Or does it make you completely untargetable? This should be easier to look up than... Yeah, I was correct. Reduces all attack damage to 1. So basically, when Mirdini gets dizzied, his armor reduces 0, it gives itself 1 intangible. And that can keep happening every time he gets dizzied. So he basically, other than losing his turn, has no consequence to being dizzy. That's great. That's an A-tier defensive ability. A+. We love you, Mirdini. Probably the best defensive ability in the game. It's basically just, when you're vulnerable, take no damage. Cool. This is great against enemies with high speed, strong bashes. If they're pumping their bashes into Mirdini, you're happy to see it. Speaking of another high tier ability. Is this A or S? We got our boy Lookachu. Something of a mascot for this game. He appears in the splash screen art near Asano. Sneezy Breezy. When an enemy is banished, draw 1 card and gain 3 energy. So, in a non-boss fight, maximum 3 cards, 3 energy. In a temple fight, where they're constantly spawning extra ads, you can get tons of resources off this. We're going to put this in the S tier, just looking at how lonely it is up here. It's a card and an energy. He's just an engine in and of himself. He just keeps putting out the work. He keeps giving you value. Every time an enemy dies, which you're going to be doing every fight, you get more resources. We love to see it. Yep. Solid S tier. Loony Lid is a kindred spirit for our boy Waldo for the Magic Man, and he reduces his shop prices by 20%. And then 2 Loony Lids goes up to 40, and then 3 Loony Lids goes up to 60. It's going to save you a lot of money. I said that money isn't that hard to make, but if you know you're going to be shopping at Magic Man... hold on, because you don't usually know... So until Magic Man moves to town, you only ever find him by mistake. So there's kind of an opportunity cost to running around with this. I guess if you're carrying your barn with you, you could pop inside and grab some Loony Lids. We're going to put you in the B tier, Loony Lid. This is a nice little money saving. It'll benefit you in the long run if you want to buy a lot of talismans, or if there's like some specific Waldo cards that you want to buy. You take the Loony Lid to your party, you get a bit of a discount. That's just fine. We appreciate you, Loony Lid. God bless, and continue on being your best self. So Magic Hat's an interesting one. Magic Wand upgrades 1 random card in your hand every turn. So every turn, you draw a card, 1 card in your hand gets upgraded. If there are no cards in your hand that need an upgrade, nothing happens. I think it always hits an unupgraded card, so it can't whiff into an upgraded card at least. So in the very early game, when you don't have a lot of talismans, this can be pretty strong. The problem is every season you get a free either upgrade or card removal card from every archway. Don't you ever take the one that gets you more cards in your deck. It's god-awful. You can't skip them. You'd much rather gain cards by leveling up that you can skip. The point is, by the time you get to the mid-game, you'll have so many talismans sitting around that every card you want to be upgraded will be upgraded, and this will only hit the few cards in your deck that you don't want upgraded, because like maybe they lose their exhaust and you don't want that. Maybe they become more expensive and you don't want that. Maybe they, there are some cards that you just don't want to upgrade, and then Magic Hat becomes a detriment to your deck in that situation. I don't think he gets the F tier, because you choose when Magic Hat's in your deck. I'm going to put him He's so good. I have to give him at least B. He's just so good in the early game. If you get a Magikarp as your first Psychic Spirit when you have like a level 10 team, you're pretty happy to see him. He just gives you value, right? He just makes your cards just like generically better. And that's good. There comes a point where you have to remove him from the team, though, when he becomes a detriment to you. So, like, you gotta be looking for that moment. Right, Minute. So, I thought I knew at the start of this video where Minute goes. Minute is shuffle time. Every time you shuffle your discard pile into your draw pile, gain 1 energy. This was like a pretty, like, easy S tier for me. But I think he actually goes up with Ribbite in the God tier. So this is crazy. Every time you shuffle your discard pile into your draw pile, gain an energy. If you have an unoptimized deck, this is like every 2 or 3 turns get a free energy. Great. If you're playing the game right, and you have a 24 card deck, and like 20 of those cards have exhaust, this reads every time you play a card, gain an energy. This is crazy. So, like, optimally, you want to be running Momentum Plus. You want to be running a bunch of Psychic cards that give you energy and then exhaust, a bunch of Dark cards that give you energy and draw cards and then exhaust. And then you have one other unit that has just, like, 4 exhausting buff cards and 4 damage cards. And you burn your whole deck away. Every time you play a card, you draw a card because of the Momentum Plus. So every time you play one of your damaging cards, it gets put into your discard pile. The discard pile gets shuffled into your deck. You draw it back immediately. You gain an energy. Minute lets you go infinite. Minute is an engine for an infinite energy playstyle. You constantly play a card, draw, play, draw, play, draw, play, draw, play, shuffle, draw, play, shuffle, draw, sorry. And he just provides infinite energy. A+. You are probably... If you're doing this hyper-optimized deck, you probably already have 99 energy a turn and you don't need it. So I guess he's like for a niche where your deck isn't like quite crazy optimized, but is still highly... We're gonna bump him down to S tier. Because, like, he's not Ribbite, right? In the most optimal Ribbite deck, you're killing the entire enemy team turn 1. I guess Minute only matters if you're running, like, a tier 1 deck. Ribbite is the enabler for the tier 0 deck. Minute makes tier 1 decks go infinite. So I don't think he gets the God, but Minute's just like a powerful engine. The energy doesn't matter if you're playing the Ribbite God deck. He basically has no passive in that situation. But if you're playing like a decent deck, then he's one of the best energy engines in the game. Yeah. Just the thing is, like, the more optimized your deck is, the better he is, until it gets perfectly optimized, at which case he becomes useless. Does that make sense? If you watch my streams for this game, and you watch the deck that took me to the end of the game in action, pretty much how the deck would run is that every turn 1, I would cap to 99 energy and then draw and play my entire deck in 1 turn. And in that playstyle, Minute wouldn't have mattered. But if my deck was just slightly less optimized, then Minute probably would have generated to me like 2 or 3 energy a turn. Or maybe like, even if he's in like a shitty deck and you're only gaining like 2 or 3 energy a game, he's just great. He's just an S tier. I'm trying to talk myself into putting him back in the God, but nobody belongs with the Ribbite. So we're going to move on to Mr. Slime. Anytime you play 5 skills in 1 turn, gain 1 energy. You're gonna notice a trend here where Psychic Spirits are just good. I think in an unoptimized deck, Slime is better than Minute, and in an optimized deck, Minute is better than Slime. 5 skills in 1 turn, gain an energy. That can be hard to do if you don't have Psychic Spirits in the deck, but Slime's a Psychic Spirit. So you play a card that generates energy, you play a card that looks for more cards, you have the extra energy to play more skills, you can get an energy every turn, basically. He's just good. He's just strong, he's a reliable engine, he fuels your power, you're pretty happy to see him. Posho is Beardini, but worse. Every 3 turns, Posho applies 1 intangible to itself. So, intangible's a strong effect, but the problem with getting it every 3 turns is that you don't know if it's going to matter on the turn it pops off. What makes Beardini so good is that you get it when he gets weak. When his armor's reduced to 0, when he becomes dizzy, you always get it when you need it. Posho, you might get the intangible on a turn where the enemy is just buffing itself or doing armor damage to you. So it can just totally whiff. It's still good. You can, every 3 turns, take 1 damage, hit great. It's like a strong, generically useful defensive ability. But it just has the chance to do nothing, so that's where he goes. Radlad, Lamplight, Moonstone, Glow Brighter. Put you in F tier. So when you're walking around at night, moonstones glow. That's how you find them. Great. They already glow plenty bright. You're not going to miss them unless you're on a lightning island or a fire island where the trees also grow, in which case you're not going to see them anyway with them glowing brighter. And then on other islands, you're not going to miss them. So this basically just does nothing. Radlad just doesn't have a passive as far as I'm concerned. I don't think there'll ever be a situation where you wouldn't have noticed a Moonstone without him that you noticed with him. So, like, who cares? Tiro, Tranquil Tot. While following you, wild spirits are 50% less likely to detect you. So I don't think enemy spirits detecting you are actually RNG. I think it's based on, like, the radius you are around them. So in my mind, this just halves the radius where wild spirits detect you. I guess the use case for Taro is if you're a low-level player on a high-level island and a fight is guaranteed death, Taro makes it easier to sneak around. So we'll put him in the B tier. That's a pretty solid use case. I don't think you ever really care about this, but there's a chance that it's generically useful sometimes. And then later in the game, you get an ability that makes its spirits lower level, then you run away, in which case Taro falls off and becomes literally useless because no enemies will attack you. But I'd say for like 80% of the game, there's an okay use case for Taro, so we'll put him in B tier just because that's kind of as low as psychic types go. Radlad aside, of course. Dark spirits, some of my favorite spirits in the game. I just love their cards. The one that's gaining energy, draw 2 cards. Moi, absolutely perfect card. But we're not here talking about the cards, because if we're talking about the cards, all the psychics and all the darks would be like an S tier. So Archaea, Eldritch Toll, subtract 10 HP from all enemies at the start of Archaea's first turn. That's fine. 10%, you're probably doing, like, in a late game fight, like 50% of the enemies a turn with an unoptimized deck, and if you're playing my crazy build, you're killing them all in the first turn, so this doesn't really matter in that case. But for the average player, I'd say this is like an 8 tier ability. No real downsides, just a chip damage to all the enemies, boom, boom, boom. Down the line, you're happy to see it go off. Yeah, 10% probably ends up being about, in a late game fight, I'm talking, when I say late game fights, I mean like walking around a 5th ring island, about, around the Dark Island, I'd say about 15 to 16 damage from all the enemies. And potentially way more in the depths of the Infinite Dungeon. So the deeper you are into the post game, the better Archaea gets. Which is why he's in the A tier. I think like for 90% of the time he's actually like a B tier or a C tier, but his post game applications bump him up. He may even deserve the S tier, but just because of his like average utility over like the whole length of the game, I think he's like a nice comfortable A tier. Casket. Raise the dead. When you banish a spirit, Casket steals up to 10 HP from each enemy. So if he just dealt 10 damage to all enemies, he'd be a worse Archaea, and he'd be firmly B tier. But he steals it. That means he heals it too. So that's, whenever someone dies. Okay, so let me think about this. I thought about it as 30 healing, but it's when a spirit is banished. So in the average late game fight, you'll be against 3 spirits, you'll kill one, you'll get 20 HP from the 2 remaining enemies, and then you'll kill another, and then you'll gain 10 HP from the guy that remains. That's pretty B tier. It's not bad. You're just not excited for it. It's just 30 health per fight. Cool. Flote heals way more. He's just a worse Flote. It's worst Octopup. Who else heals? Yeah. Yeah, we just don't care about that really. Again, it's not bad per se. It's not C tier. You'll never take him off the team because he fell off so hard. And in a temple fight, I guess you could heal a lot more, but the problem is, by the time you're strong enough to reliably catch dark spirits, you've probably beaten all the temples. I'm putting you down to C tier. I'm gonna leave you in B because it feels right. You're better than Brickhouse. You're better than Dropple, yeah. But you're you're only in B tier because everybody else is worse than you. Is kind of how it works out. Dark Coffee. The end of combat, gain 30 stamina. By the time you have Dark Coffee, you have like 100 stamina food in your inventory that heals like 50 each. Why would you care about getting 30 every fight? It's not going to help you. It's not going to matter in any situation. You might as well not even have an ability. Yeah. Sorry, bro, I want to like you. You're a silly little guy. You're really cute. But at the end of the day, you just don't do anything. Evil Eye. Unwelcome presence. Spirit spawns more frequently. As far as like a time-saving ability goes, so we kind of saw when I did that freeze test. Enemy spawn rate in this game is actually pretty low. Like, if you're just like walking around not looking for spirits, you see plenty. But if you're ever in a situation where you're actively looking for a fight, it's actually pretty hard to find them sometimes. Just for like farming and getting into scuffles and like intentionally going out and wanting to get into Evil Eye will save you a lot of time. And that's what we want in a utility non-combat ability. You know, if you're hollow hunting, if you're looking to capture specific spirits, Evil Eye just makes it a little tiny more likely that you'll find what you're looking for in a timely manner, and we're happy to see that. He probably really only deserves the B. It doesn't save you that much time, but just on my personal bias, he gets the A tier. And that's what this whole list is at the end of the day. Carry out. Dark Blessing. At the start of your turn, draw 1 additional card. Only the first turn, sorry, at the start of your first turn, draw 1 additional card. It's kind of just a worse version of the Snow Cone. Less targeted, less cards. It's generically useful, so I think he still goes in the A tier? It's like I'd rather have this than almost any of these abilities. It's just like a good, reliable boost. He's not like too excited. I wouldn't like build anything around him. No, you know what? He doesn't change your game plan. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking here. Maybe I should bump some people up to S tier based solely off his A tier placement. Because, like, he is generically useful on turn 1, and then he doesn't do anything. And if you're playing, like, a hyper-optimized deck and you're going for the turn 1 kill, he could matter a lot. But the longer the game goes on, the less he matters. So, like, do we actually give a shit? I think we do. I think he's still A tier, but, like, he's, like, the bottom of A tier. He's just scraping into the category. Unlike Fluffox, with his eerie jig, completely remove one random condition at the start of the turn. So, Fluffox can fall off in the post game. The thing about this game is that for the vast majority of the main game, as you're going through the story in the first year, you're only ever really fighting one element of spirit at a time, right? If you're on a poison island, you're only fighting poison types. If you're on a fire island, you're only fighting fire types. So Fluffox reads for 99% of the game shit all over your opponent's game plan. If you are on a poison island, if you're in the poison temple, and you have a Fluffox, he just invalidates all the poison in their deck. If you're fighting fire guys, he invalidates all the burn in their deck. He's not great on the Dark Island, where the enemies aren't really benefiting from status debuffs and are just hitting you really hard. But for, like, the second and third strongest enemy types, Fluffox is great. He just completely invalidates their game plan. Life is good. He just pops away on... And there's other debuffs, too. Yeah. He's just great. He's a little worse in the Infinite Dungeon when you're fighting randomized groups of foes, and like you might get hit by like a poison and a fire, and you really need him to shed the poison, but he sheds the fire instead. He loses that consistency a little bit. But that's like the last 5% of the game. I guess if you really are into the Infinite Dungeon and the infinite scaling, it could be like half your playtime, 80% of your playtime. Fluffox has fallen off, in which case he'd fall down for A tier. But I didn't go that far through the Infinite Dungeon. Most players aren't going to go that far through the Infinite Dungeon. The only reason to do the Infinite Dungeon is to get hollow hunting potions. So if you're a hollow hunter, maybe drop him to the A tier, but I'm going to put him in the S, baby. Wolfbane, Depth Grip. Retain any of Wolfbane's cards drawn at the start of battle. So this is interesting, because this could read 5 useless cards sit in your hand for the rest of the game. This could read 2 really good combo pieces sit in your hand until you need them. Or this could read 0 cards, nothing happens. So if you're putting Wolfbane in your team, you should be playing for a combo. If you decided to put Fluffox in your team, you have a game plan. I'm going to put him in the A. Yeah. I'm going to put him in the A. So, retain strong. Retain means that at the end of your turn, you don't put a card back in your deck, it sits in your hand. The problem with the game has a max hand size of 10 cards. So retain can be a problem if you retain useless cards that you don't want to play. But hopefully all 8 Wolfbane cards, and he's a Dark Spirit, you can put a lot of 0-cost cards that exhaust themselves in your deck, and just cycle them. Yeah, I think we're pretty happy to have Wolfbane's Death Grip. If you're playing around it, great. Great! Wolfbane's a pretty cool guy. Appreciate you, Wolfbane. And we're finally on to the last unit, and this guy makes me rethink a lot of my list. Pardon. I don't think I've ever talked for this long and consistently for 2 hours straight without any pauses like this. Darklock's ability is Time Heals All. heals back to full health every 5 rounds of battle. So basically, every 5 turns, no matter how low you get, he just pops right back up to full health. Is this good? I don't think there are a lot of fights in the main game that go on for 5 rounds. I think if your deck is even halfway decent, you should be winning on turn 3 or turn 4. And if you're a crazy power gamer like me, then you're going to win pretty consistently on turn 1 every single fight, in which case Darklock is useless. But if you're going far in the Infinite Dungeon and you're not cheesing it, and you're like having grindy, crazy fights, Darklock's probably the best character in the game, right? Because you just play like a high armor, high stealth playstyle. You grind down against the opponent. You fight the war of attrition. I'm gonna put him in the A tier. It's just a strong effect. I would never personally, in my playstyle, benefit from it. But yeah, just generically good. Happy to see it. So this is the list, all 79 usable spirits. There are 5 other spirits in the game that you can see and interact and put in your book, but they're not accessible. These are all the spirits you can get ranked into S, A, B, C, F, and Ribbite tier. Is there anyone I want to move around looking at this at the end? A small part of my brain wants me to like move 2 people from the F tier up to the C just to make the list look more balanced. I think I'm gonna move because Dusty, he doesn't have no passive like most of these guys might. He doesn't make your deck worse like Punchypot does. You can play him early game as a mana engine and feel pretty happy about it. I'm gonna move Sheep up too. He was my starter. He was my boy. This is a pure bias pick. His passive can trigger on fire dungeons and do a significant amount of damage. It's not like he's completely. It's just his niche is so unbelievably small. And yeah, this is it. This is the list. And I like. There we go. Perfect. This is it. The full list in all of its glory. Take it in. Appreciate. Enjoy. Thank you for taking the time if you made it to the end of the video. I hope I was helpful to you in your theory crafting for Moonstone Island. I hope that I spent 60 hours with the game, and I'm a pretty veteran card game player. I feel like I know enough what I'm talking about to give you like a rough guide on how to use these guys, but I'm not infallible, I'm not perfect. So if you have problems with any of these placements, you can hit me up in the comments below. We can hash it and argue it out. Maybe I update this list later. I'll probably post it on the Discord, and I'll post both in the Moonstone Island official Discord and in the description of this video. I'll post a link to the tier list that I made on the tier maker website, and you can make your own, put your own competing tier list up, hash it out. If you ever want to see my thoughts on any other games, I stream on this very channel a lot. I'd say probably 3 to 5 days a week, usually in the early morning. I'd say about 10 a.m. AST. That's Atlantic Standard Time. GMT -4. So come and check me out. I'm probably not gonna make a lot of formal videos like this. I much prefer the streaming style of content. I'd love to spend time chatting with the community. So if you're interested in seeing that, subscribe to the video in the channel. And if you're not interested in seeing more of my content, but you enjoyed this video, give a like. I don't like engagement begging like this, but the fact of the platform is that the more engagement I get, the farther the reach of my content is. And if this was helpful to you in any way, shape, or form, I just really appreciate you guys doing the work to help me push my content further and further. I like to think I'm a thoughtful guy and have, feelings, opinions, and love to give that all the world can benefit from. Or at least, those in this particular niche. I'm rambling. Again, this has been Alex, Alchin, Altoon, whatever the heck you want to call me. And until next time, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and good night.